The political moment South Africa is in behoves citizens to reconsider the question of their own place in it and to ignite a sense of empowerment and response over uncertainty and anxiety. Songezo Zibi, former newspaper editor and chairperson of the Rivonia Circle, as well as the convener of the Rise campaign, proposes 5 steps to help cope with the decline of the ANC and South Africa. Lovely to have you with us, Songezo. Good evening and welcome. Many have opined about what is right for the president of the governing party and the country to do, and their well-argued views, as you have no doubt been reading about, contradict each other. Why do you believe South Africans watching this should refocus their attention away from the party's moment of crisis and look rather at the effects of what its leadership has wrought in the country? I think you're on mute. It's the horrible mute button. We hate it. Hi, Songezo. Let's try again.
Let's try again. I hope you can hear me now.
Got you.
So South Africans have been tolerating ANC distractions for a very, very long time. This is going to be the 3rd president in a row that does not finish their term. There's President Thabo Mbeki, there's President Jacob Zuma, and there is now President Cyril Ramaphosa. I think it is important not to lose sight of the really important things in South African society, that it is high unemployment, an economy that is being taken over by criminal gangs, a crime that is continuing to engulf communities right across the board, a high cost of living, load shedding to which we've got no solutions, and Transnet, which continues to choke the South African economy because the backbone of the country's logistical system does not work. What we are seeing through the coverage on SABC and everywhere else is that the ANC leadership absolutely has no time to govern. They are busy with internal political matters, whether it is a leadership contest or one or other corruption scandal, either engulfing the Secretary General or the president or somebody else in the party. And it is really important for South Africans to realize that as long as the leadership remains distracted, the problems that hurt South Africans on a daily basis are not going to be resolved.
Songezo, in rehab, you get a 12-step program to recovery. You are proposing your 5 steps to life without the party. Let's work through a few of them. Step 1 is all about the president telling the country the truth and not resigning. Why?
Absolutely, because Iman, you must remember there was a very noisy National Executive Committee meeting, at least before the National Executive Committee meeting, the previous one, where Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Lindiwe Sisulu, and a coterie of other ANC leaders were calling on him to step down because he's compromised. He then allegedly took the ANC into his confidence. They all went quiet afterwards. They didn't say anything. The country needs to know what he told them. Who else is implicated? And so if he steps down and does not go through a parliamentary inquiry, the cover-up can be executed successfully so that we never really get to know where the money came from, what was the purpose of the money, why is it that the ANC itself, the top decision-making body between conferences, felt that it needed to remain silent after he took them into their confidence. And what, therefore, is the implication for the rest of the country? Of course, he must go through an inquiry. Every scrap of paper and every witness must be subjected to public questioning so that the South African people can see for themselves what really happened and what political decisions or judgments they need to exercise in future about ANC presidents or any other president.
You know, the next question, I think, Songezo, in a way ties in with the point that you were making in your opening there. Against the backdrop of the national conference, days from now, often billed mainly as an elective conference rather than a national conference. You believe that none of the people among them or in their ranks offer hope for the renewal of the country?
Absolutely not. I mean, Iman, come on. All of these people have been at the epicenter of South African politics. From 2000, if you recall, in 2006, economic growth in this country was 5.4% for that year, 5.4, 5.6%. Since then, it's been a straight decline. Institutions have been destroyed. Corruption has become endemic. Criminal gangs have taken over certain sectors of the economy and so on. What do they have to offer South Africans? Absolutely nothing. I was on SABC last week and I spent 40 minutes, listening to Paul Mashatile in an interview on this program with one of your colleagues, and he offered 40 minutes of nothing. It really is important that South Africans move beyond the mediocrity that has become the ANC and start looking forward to a different and better sense of leadership. Let me give you, finally, a sense. In 2002, the top candidate for the ANC and SA was Trevor Manuel. In 2022, it's Sihle Zikalala, and Andile Lungisa is in the top 10 nominees. That tells you everything you need to know about whether South Africans should continue to have any hope at all in the ANC's renewal or not. I think the renewal that is required is a renewal of the country outside of the ANC as the center of power.
You know, Songezo, there are many who don't care who's in the driver's seat, as long as they believe they're on the path to a land of proper jobs, dignified living and hope. How do you encourage anyone to take a keener interest in who leads when for decades people have become more disconnected to who leads, weighed down by the ravages of corruption, crime? Just tonight we've got stories about malnourishment in a corner of our country, a developing nation, and they don't see politics as the fountain from which new life flows.
That is indeed true. The work that the Rivonia Circle has done over the last 10 to 11 months has involved being in communities in 8 of the 9 provinces. And it is indeed true that South Africans have lost hope in political parties as a whole and in the ANC in particular. But there is good news, Iman, and the good news is that the civic spirit has not died. When we choose to have the right conversation with South Africans about their future, about the situation in their communities, and they see a role for themselves to play in turning those communities around, they re-engage, they participate, they take part in those conversations. They've got ideas about the way forward. I think we need to break out of the ANC style of politics, which is premised on what proposition you can make to the population so that they buy into the party's agenda, and encourage South Africans to develop their own agenda, which is going to be the basis of which they can engage with party politics.
So how do people who still care and who are still here work with other like-minded people in this spirit of, being civic-minded and collaborative?
So, Iman, we've started something we call the RISE campaign, together with hundreds of South Africans who've been part of our conversations. And what the RISE campaign is really all about is about South Africans putting up their hands to say, I will find solutions in my community. I will find solutions to national problems. And that campaign is really about lifting South African communities up and being part of a political movement where the right caliber of leadership, not the fare that we see being offered by the ANC and other parties, being able to be the ones that have been selected from the ground up to represent the South African people in successive elections beginning in 2024 on to 2026 and 2029. The really important thing, Iman, is to focus on solutions. There's malnutrition, there is hunger, there is crime. And while the ANC is distracted, we need to be working on those things.
I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about this in the lead up to our national elections. Songezo, thank you for talking to us tonight. Appreciate you, former newspaper editor and chairperson of the Rivonia Circle, as well as convener of the RISE campaign.